Part 70. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 691. Chapter 691 What a Genius! Yuan waved her hand and grabbed an empty jade slip, carved her method into it, and then threw it to Wan Buddha. While Wan Buddha was stunned, she went to Mujukan. Wanfo took the jade slip and returned to Wanfo Temple, and then read the method Yuan said. He is still thinking that this Yuan is really going against the will of heaven. Will she be able to find a better method than him in a few months? After reading it, Wanfo frowned. Is this still allowed? He also put down the jade slip, and then operated as described in Yuan's jade slip. After a few breaths, Wan Buddha could not believe that he had used it so easily, and it was even more powerful than what he had used. This is called true integration. Wanfo really wanted to crash to death. He has lived for so long, and he is not as good as a girl who is tens of thousands of years old. He just helped her point out the direction, and he was able to understand it in a few months. He was really a genius. On the other side, Mujukan looked at the jade slip given by Yuan and immediately followed it without thinking. Sure enough, it was twice as powerful as his previous fusion. He was surprised that Wan'er was not following common sense and could figure out another method of fusion. He pressed the jade slips of 10,000 Buddhas, and it was indeed fused, making the power twice as powerful as before. He was just happy when Wan'er sent him this. Mujukan simply didn't know what to say. Wan'er, you are so smart. He hugged her and kissed her heavily. Yuan curled her lips. How could she be smart? She always found another way when it didn't work. Anyway, in her concept, nothing was static. To say that he is smart, or Wanfo is clever, people can integrate themselves, to say the harm, and count the Mujukan. He has succeeded according to the method of Wanfo. You can practice some more, and I'll go take a look at the two treasures this fusion method must be given to them. They can figure it out by themselves, and they don't know how long it will take them to figure it out. Give it to them so that they can avoid detours. Okay, go ahead. Yuan nodded and returned to the practice room with a flash of consciousness, asking Xiaoji to look for the two treasures. Not long after, Xiaoji said, Master, there is something wrong with you, little masters. What's wrong? Yuan felt nervous when she heard this. Xiaoji did not speak, but presented the picture. I saw Liangbao sitting on a mountain peak, surrounded by people, who were besieging them, and Liangbao was in a very bad condition. Damn it, so many people were besieging her son. Yuan came to Liangbao with a flash of consciousness. She didn't care, she threw the little snake out to protect the two treasures, and she quickly pinched it to death. 2 breaths later, a three-color light group more than 10 feet in size flew toward those people with a whoosh sound. The ball of light flew out and immediately turned into 9 fire dragons, attacking the 9 people respectively. The 9 people couldn't see Yuan's cultivation level, but the aura of the 9 fire dragons was so strong, but they couldn't bear to part with the treasures on those 2 boys. The 9 people were not willing to be defeated without a fight, so they all used their immortal weapons to fight back. Yuan curled her lips. You immortal lords, immortal sects, and immortal kings want to take over the star change and dream about it. As soon as she arrived, she made a killing move. Sure enough. Boom boom boom. 9 loud noises and Kowloon exploded. Ah! 9 screams were heard, and at least 4 people died in the star transformation. The rest of the people immediately retreated 100 feet and looked at Yuan in horror. What a powerful attack! There are 4 immortals among them. They have higher cultivation level than Yuan, but they absolutely cannot use this powerful move. The 4 of them were thinking about whether to avenge the 4 dead disciples. Why don't you get out of here? Do you need me to kill you all? Yuan yelled, not because she was kind-hearted and let them go, but because she was anxious to see the injuries of the 2 treasures. 4 died, which is enough. There are still 16 people, keep them and look for them later. You can tell by their clothes that they are disciples of the sect. These people must have come down from Liangzin Road. When they saw the two treasures passing through the tribulation, the divine clothes they were wearing were not torn apart at all. When this group of people saw this, they started to think of robbing the wealth. Yuan guessed well. They were from the sect, and they came together to practice spiritual training. The 20 of them hit it off immediately, and when the two treasures had just finished their tribulation, they caught up with them and attacked them. When the 16 men heard Yuan's roar, they retreated another 100 feet and refused to leave without attacking. Yuan had no time to settle accounts with them, so she flew back and put the two treasures into the space with a wave of her sleeves. At the same time, she and the little snake also entered. In the space, Liang Bao finally opened his mouth and spit out a large mouthful of blood. Mujukan and Wanfo both saw it and came out. Ba, the cultivation of the two young donors is unstable. Yuan glanced at him angrily. Don't they know? Waner, help them stabilize their cultivation first. After saying this, Mujukan sat behind Dabao and sent immortal power into his danshan. Yuan nodded and sat behind Bao, conveying his immortal power to him. 3 days later, Liang Bao's livid face returned to normal, and they were able to operate the exercises on their own. Mujukan and Yuan K put down their hands and breathed a sigh of relief. But 10,000 Buddhas touched the two treasures, and a golden light enveloped them. Liang Bao immediately felt warm all over his body, and the depression in his heart was swept away. Yuan and Mujukan knew that Wanfo was doing this for the sake of the two treasures, so they did not stop them. The two of them also said respectfully, "Thank you so much, the holy monk." 10,000 Buddhas, haha, the donor doesn't blame the poor monk for being busy. Yuan glanced at him again. This Wanfo was more annoying than before. You keep an eye on your son here, I'll come as soon as I can, Yuan said to Mujukan. Mujukan nodded, okay. Yuan came to the training room and controlled the gate to look for the 16 people. At this time, 16 people were standing in the main hall of a sect called Shangqing section. Sitting at the head was an immortal with the strength of an immortal and a face in his 30s. He listened to the reports from the 16 people below. Among the 4 people Yuan beat to death, one was his young disciple. The 16 people did not dare to lie and told the story. However, they all put the blame on Yuan. One of them also placed Yuan's image in the main hall. He said, "Sect master, this is the person. We can't see her cultivation, but her magic is very powerful. She attacks us as soon as she comes up, and so do we. I couldn't save my nephew because I couldn't take precautions." The sect leader looked at Yuan's image with a sinister look, as if he wanted to carve her into his heart, always reminding himself that this person was the murderer of his young disciple. His little disciple is a rare genius in the sect, and he is very rare for this precious disciple. In the future, when his son or apprentice takes over the position of suzerain, he must have someone to help him. How can those people in the sect dare to act rashly with a young senior brother who has suffered a lot of harm? But just go out once and there will be no one left. You guys go down and go to the discipline hall, the sect master said expressionlessly. Don't think that he didn't know if they didn't tell them. The people who came out there were all from the road of refining their hearts, and it was clear that people who robbed people would not succeed but would be killed. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 692. Chapter 692, The Sect Leader of the Shangqing Dynasty. He may not care about killing anyone, but not his disciples. This hatred must be avenged. Thinking about it, murderous aura overflowed from his body. When Yuan saw this scene, she sneered in her heart. These idiots thought that the sect leader would let them go. But, it's been a long time since I sent the demon emperor a companion. With his consciousness focused on the 16 people, Those 16 people appeared in the space. By the way, there was also the sect leader, who just had murderous intentions towards her. Naturally he will not let it go. The sect master, who was still stunned, saw the place changed in the blink of an eye. He was extremely horrified, but what shocked him even more was what was behind him. He and the 16 people actually appeared in a small world again. Demon Emperor, I brought you a companion again. This time Yuan appeared. She is no longer afraid of these people with her current cultivation level. It's you. Where did you get us? One of the 16 people recognized Yuan at a glance. Yuan smiled at them. This is a very nice place, isn't it, Demon Emperor? Yuan smiled at the Demon Emperor, who came forward. The Demon Emperor smiled bitterly. This little ancestor has sent so many human monks here again, and this place will not be peaceful in the future. He said, the fairy is so kind. It's okay, I'm afraid you'll be bored, so I'll send you some immortals to relieve your boredom. Thank you, fairy. No thanks, the fairy is gone, please treat them well. Snort. This was the fate of injuring her sons. It was already pretty good if they didn't get killed. Fairy, stay here. Just when Yuan was about to leave, the sect leader immediately stopped her. Yuan turned back to look at the sect leader and said coldly, what's the matter, sect leader? Why did the fairy send my sect leader and his disciples here for no reason? Are you not afraid that the ancestors of our sect will cause trouble to the fairy? That's it, Yuan said disdainfully. The ancestor of the sect is nothing, she has never been afraid of gods, and she is even afraid of a few immortals. At the end of the day, there is another demon emperor here. Is this sect leader blind and didn't he see it? The sect leader was stunned. On the other hand, an immortal lord went over and pulled his sleeve, pointing at the demon emperor next to him. The sect leader didn't even look at where this place was, thinking it was still in the Shangqing sect, and he was still playing off his sect master's prestige. This fairy's method is really weird. They are considered high-level monks in the fairy world, but they don't know what method they used to send them here. It's really invisible. The sect leader looked at the demon emperor and was not too surprised. After all, he could always see the ancestor of the immortal emperor realm in the sect. What was on his mind was that he couldn't stay here. Now that I have calmed down, I feel a lot more panicked. Even the ancestors couldn't send people to this place in just a few breaths. What kind of power is this? But he knew that the only way to get out of here was to let the fairy take him away. The sect leader suppressed the anxiety in his heart, took a deep breath and said, Fairy, how can you send us back? Yuan, why are we sending you back? 20 of them wanted to rob my son when he had just finished his tribulation. He hasn't recovered yet. If they hadn't defended themselves against the calamity, it would have been a trivial matter for him to fall down this time. His life would have been at stake. Is it safe? The leader of the clan took one look at the 16 people and said that this is what happened. Sure enough, how could these idiots do such a shameful thing? 16 people lowered their heads. The Shangqing sect is a really well-known and upright sect, and they are most shameless about killing people and grabbing treasures, and it is expressly stipulated that killing people and grabbing treasures is not allowed. Once found out, he will be severely punished. But the demon emperor saw it with gusto. This fairy was very interesting. He threw all these criminals here. He wanted to see if he could keep all these people this time. But what does this have to do with me? The sect master didn't understand why Yuan brought him here and completely ignored the matter of going to the murderer's house. What does it matter? You won't avenge your apprentice. The sect leader was stunned again. He looked at Yuan. Who is this fairy? Can she read minds? Yuan glanced at him, thinking she didn't know. Snort. Too lazy to talk to him, Yuan was about to leave as soon as her consciousness moved. Fairy, wait a minute, the sect leader shouted again. What's the matter? I've never seen anyone as busy as you. Yuan stopped again. Fairy, I have some news for you, can you let me out? The sect leader had an idea. What's the news? Tell me first so I can think about it. The sect master immediately sent a message, Fairy, there is a 10,000-foot cliff in the forbidden area of the Shangqing sect, and there is a strong power of stars below. He did feel the power of the stars in Yuan. As the sect leader, he naturally had the opportunity to go to the forbidden area. The aura on Yuan's body was the same as the aura there. He guessed that this fairy was practicing the power of the stars. The power of the stars, Yuan murmured. There was the power of the stars in her space, and she had no shortage of it. But if there was a strong star power here, things would not be simple. Then she will go and have a look. That. Don't worry, Fairy, I didn't know that my disciple deserved his crime before. I swear in my heart that I will never seek revenge from the fairy again. The sect master is very smart and immediately expressed his attitude, joking, who wants to stay here for the rest of his life, and it is not worth it for a disciple. Okay, but you have to stay here for a few days. I'll go take a look first. If you didn't lie to me, I'll come and send you out. If you lied to me, then you will always be with the demon emperor. But, Fairy. The sect leader wanted to say something else, but this time Yuan didn't give him a chance and immediately dodged into the space. Where is the Shangqing sect? It is not easy to find a forbidden area, and the sect leader is required to show the way. It's not like she didn't understand what the sect master meant when he called her back again. Yuan entered the training room and asked Xiaoji to search immediately, as long as it was a place with strong star power. With such a small range, Xiaoji found it without much effort. It is indeed a cliff. Xiaoji, look down the cliff. The power of the stars is really strong here. Xiaoji obeyed the order and moved downward slowly. This cliff is straight and really long. At the end, the power of the stars there is even stronger. Yuan looked with her consciousness and saw that there was a pit below, a large pit of more than 10 feet. There were no plants in the pit, just some sand and stones, and there was smoke in the middle. Yuan felt a familiar atmosphere. The breath of the star sword. Could it be that this is the half of the star sword? Yuan immediately dodged over and searched for him with her consciousness. She didn't find anything for a long time, so she escaped directly underground. There is no 10 feet, nor 100 feet, but the power of the stars is stronger. Yuan kept running downwards, and after 1,000 feet, finally, on a huge piece of ore, there was indeed the shining half of the star sword stuck in it. Without saying a word, Yuan moved the big ore into the space together. After moving it, a large space was formed here. Yuan took a closer look and found that there was nothing valuable before she entered the space. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 693. Chapter 693, Star Broken Sword. In the space, Yuan looked at the half-star sword on the huge stone. Wanfo and Mujukan also came over. Star Sword 10,000 Buddhas were surprised. Do you know him? Yuan turned around and asked Wanfo. Wanfo nodded, that is the symbol of Tianxia realm. None of us at that time knew it, but how could it be damaged? Then who do you think can destroy the star sword in this world? 10,000 Buddhas said solemnly, of course, this is the person who refines it, and the person who can use it. The poor monk thought, excluding the person who refined it, this star sword, star cauldron, and star flag are the best artifacts, is the most powerful artifact in the world, more powerful than ordinary top-grade artifacts. Therefore, the person who refines the set of artifacts will never ruin his most proud work unless he encounters an irresistible force. In addition, even those who can use the set of artifacts, others do not have that ability. Yuan said quietly, the divine monk is very knowledgeable. I was using this set of artifacts back then, but how could it be destroyed? I don't have the memory. That means I don't have the memory of the Tianxia divine realm. Wanfo looked at Yuan in surprise. Yuan nodded, her expression very low, as if that memory was very painful. Even if she couldn't remember it, she felt it. Mujukan held her in his arms and comforted her silently. Amitba, don't worry about it, the donor, it will always be the past 10,000 Buddhas sprinkled Buddha light on Yuan. In his eyes, Yuan had always been a fairy who suddenly became enlightened. He had never seen her like this before. That past must have been cruel and profound. Somehow, Wanfo wished from the bottom of his heart that she would always live so violently and freely. Thank you very much. After the Buddha's light passed, the gloom in Yuan's heart was swept away. She looked at the broken sword of the stars, stretched out her hand to grab it, and the sword flew back to its owner as casually as it did. Yuan looked at the broken sword in her hand, then waved her hand, and the hilt appeared in front of her. Whoops! When the sword saw the hilt, it suddenly flew up and became one with the sword. At the moment when the two merged into one, the star sword was spinning in the air, its whole body emitting white and red light, alternating between the two lights, lighting up the entire space in a bright and red color. The three of them were shocked by this sudden scene. If the broken artifact can be repaired automatically without re-refining, then the star sword must have a weapon spirit. In fact, it's not surprising. It's strange that the best artifacts don't have weapon spirits. So, Yuan is wondering now why there are no weapon spirits in the star flag and the star cauldron. Also, why is there no star pen? Her level of talismans is not low. An hour later, a complete star sword flew back and lay in Yuan's hand. The star sword is 1 foot long, white in color, delicate and small, and looks no different from an ordinary artifact. But if you touch it with your spiritual consciousness, you can feel the powerful sword energy on the sword. People with weak spiritual consciousness will have their souls hurt by the sword energy. Yuan looked at the star sword carefully and found that there was still a crack at the break. Wanfo and Mujukan also looked at the star sword curiously, and naturally discovered the crack, and realized that the star sword had not been repaired. Waner, put it over to the star stone, Mujukan said. Well, I also have this plan. After saying that, Yuan's consciousness moved, and the star sword was already lying in the star stone. Sure enough, as soon as the star sword arrived, it greedily absorbed the power of the stars. Yuan had an idea and her consciousness moved again, and a bunch of soul stones were piled up around the star sword. She paid careful attention, and sure enough, the star sword also absorbed soul power. Yuan looked at it for a while, then withdrew her consciousness and looked at the big pile of ore. Monk, do you know what kind of ore this is? Yuan asked. Even the star sword was only inserted on it and had not been destroyed. Yuan estimated that the star sword should have fallen down at the beginning, which can be seen from the cliff. The cliff walls look like they have been cut out. This sword has passed through thousands of feet of soil and is still inserted so deeply into the ore. How can the power be weak? The ore is still intact. It can be seen that this ore is not a common thing, but they don't recognize it. Mujukan also looked at the ore carefully, but he didn't recognize it either. And Wanfo looked straight at the ore, thinking in his mind. This ore was brown in color with no color at all. In addition to the breath of star power, there was also an atmosphere he didn't recognize. As an ancient divine monk, 10,000 Buddha's knowledge is several mountains higher than that of today's new divine beings. But he really didn't know this ore, but there are all kinds of strange things in the world, so it's not a shame to not know it, so he said, Donor, this poor monk really doesn't know this thing. He paused and then said, perhaps the energy ball of our universe was damaged and fell from it. The energy ball is damaged, Yuan was confused. Yes, Wan Buddha nodded, this happened in ancient times. Legend has it that there was a fight between several gods. They were not small gods like us, but gods with very big bodies, so big that there was a small world of gods. They were that kind of fight between gods and men damaged the energy ball. What are the serious consequences if the energy ball is damaged? For example, the energy ball ruptures, explodes, the energy is used up early. Yuan suddenly thought of these questions in her mind. She was not surprised by the tall god-man. After all, there was Arthur in the space, and his size was already beyond the range of human stature she knew. Anyone who was bigger than them could still accept it. By the way, thinking of Arthur, Yuan also remembered that there was a divine soul imprisoned in the space, and he would throw it to 10,000 Buddhas later. Anyway, there were so many souls in his 10,000 Buddhas temple, and that soul would not be lonely inside. Wanfo admired Yuan's brain for suddenly thinking of the key point of the problem. Indeed, since that incident, all walks of life have been affected. First of all, the originally pure power was mixed with many unseen powers. For example, the divine power in the God realm, originally the divine power in the air accounted for at least 80%, but after 100,000 years, the divine power accounted for at most 60%. What is the concept of losing 20%? Even losing a few points can reduce the monk's cultivation speed. The more complex the power, the monks have to refine the mixed power in the power when absorbing it for cultivation, leaving pure power for the body to absorb and practice. As for the consequences of the energy ball rupturing, exploding, and being consumed early, it is definitely possible, but people in the five-axis realm have not seen energy and cannot make rash judgments. Wanfo said, these issues mentioned by the donor are unknown to the poor monk. People in the five-axis realm have only heard of this legend and have never actually seen the energy ball. Yuan understood that she just didn't expect that because of the return of seeing Chen broken sword, she would know about this incredible thing. Since you don't know what it is, let it sit in space, and you won't give it food anyway. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 694. Chapter 694, First Hearing About the God Tower. Then let's go there, Yuan said. The three of them came to the Enlightenment Tea, and Yuan took the opportunity to give the soul to 10,000 Buddhas. Wanfo didn't ask what was going on, so he threw his soul into Wanfo temple. He knew that Yuan was not a person who killed innocent people indiscriminately. This spirit was definitely not a good thing if it was stuck in the space. Then he went to the 10,000 Buddhas temple and let the spirits of those little Buddhas influence him. Immediately, 10,000 Buddhas sent a message, and the Buddha's voice immediately surrounded the soul. What's the donor's next plan? Wan Buddha asked. Yuan looked at the teacup in her hand and shook her head. I have a lot of plans, but my cultivation is limited. There are many things that she cannot do with her current level of cultivation. She took a sip of tea and said, just stay in the space for now. There is really no place to go outside. Others go on an adventure, put in a lot of effort and narrowly escape death, but she, just like going to a garden, just go away. She couldn't have something to defend herself against without challenging it. She thought it was stupid behavior. Although life is more than once, the price is too high and is not within the scope of her consideration. 10,000 Buddhas said quietly, the poor monk knows a place that may be suitable for the donor to visit. Where? Yuan looked at 10,000 Buddhas curiously. With 10,000 Buddhas' strength, that place must be worth her visit. 10,000 Buddhas looked at her with a smile but not a smile and said, do you dare to go? It won't be in Tianxia realm. 10,000 Buddhas smiled, it's true, it's a sacred tower in the Tianxia divine realm. Tower of Gods. Yes, the divine tower has 10 floors in total. Each floor corresponds to the monk's cultivation level, but only the God-human realm can be reached. It is also a place where all monks can go to experience. Yuan curled her lips and said, if I said it, I didn't say it. No, no matter who enters this tower, no matter what hatred they have, they are not allowed to do anything to anyone who enters the tower, not even the Lord God. Ha, that's really a good place from now on. After I ascend to the God realm, I can just go there to practice. If Tianya sees me, there's nothing they can do to me, Yuan said with a smile. Wanfo said again, it's okay. It's really a good exercise in there, but it only takes a lot of effort. Monk, doesn't the sacred tower run on the sacred stone? The donor is smart. There is nothing on the 10th floor. Legend has it that there is only one box and no one knows what is inside. Is the donor interested? Of course I'm interested. Yuan narrowed her eyes and looked at Wan Buddha. This guy was encouraging her again. It seemed like she could really go and visit the pagoda. Go and see the legendary box that no one can touch. Mujukan stared at the 10,000 Buddhas with dangerous eyes. What kind of trouble would this dead monk try? He gritted his teeth and said, Monk, what do you mean? He is not stupid, so he naturally sees that this dead monk is encouraging Waner again. If the dead monk behaves like this again, he will kick him out. He didn't believe it. He was determined to drive out this dead monk with evil intentions. Waner would not listen to him. Wanfo was very calm. When he met Mujukan's murderous eyes, he said calmly, Amitba, I am a benefactor, but this poor monk has no meaning. He really didn't mean anything, he was just a little selfish. Legend has it that the box contained the green lotus of good fortune. If it was really that thing, then after it was refined and became his Buddhist instrument, it would be even more powerful. He has the confidence to defeat Tiandao sect. He had been to the tower countless times back then. Like the gods, after reaching the 9th floor, he could not get up to the 10th floor. Wanfo thought of the realm gate on Yuan's body. He went to the 9th floor to see if he could find a way to go up. It's impossible to go like this. There is a powerful barrier on the 10th floor that no artifact can break. Legend has it that the divine tower is not a thing from the Tianxia realm. Of course, no one knows. When people encounter unknown things, they often push it into areas that people don't know. Mujukan said fiercely, the holy monk had better not mean anything, otherwise. 10,000 Buddhas only smiled slightly in response to Mujukan's threat. Yuan didn't say a word. She liked Mujukan's blatant defense of his shortcomings. She didn't want to pour cold water on him. This great monk should be beaten and beaten, but he always uses dirty tricks from behind to take advantage of others. Wan Fo is not surprised at all about Yuan's reaction. He is a guest in this space, not the master. The guest plots against the master. It doesn't matter if the master loses his temper, as long as the master doesn't open his mouth and drive him away. This place is truly a magical place, you would be a fool to leave. Do you think that if you practice Buddhism, you will have no desires or pursuits? Wrong, Buddhist cultivation and Taoist cultivation are actually the same. If you don't have desires and don't seek, you are a living dead. They are all people who pursue the highest realm. They also need cultivation resources. If they want to get more resources, they will use various means just like Taoists. Although Buddhist practice has the principles of Buddhist practice, it is not to steal, not to rob, or to kill people to seize treasures. But there are a few people who really do it. Just like him, he cultivated from a small Buddhist disciple to a divine Buddha, and his hands were covered with blood. The world of cultivation is cruel. If you don't kill people, you will be killed. Being compassionate also depends on whom you are treating. Amitba, the two donors, the poor monk has returned first. Wanfo stood up, pronounced the Buddha's name and returned to Wanfo temple. As soon as 10,000 Buddhas left, Mujukan asked, Waner, what do these 10,000 Buddhas mean? There should be something he wants on the sacred tower, but he can't get it, Yuan guessed. Waner needs to be careful when she goes there in the future. I know this. It's too early to say this now. Let's go out for a walk. Let's take a look at Yuhairan and the others. They are both making progress, and they must also make progress. Before going out, Yuan prepared a lot of things suitable for their cultivation. 3 months later, the couple left the space with their 2 babies. When you two advance to the next level, send a message. When Liang Bao said goodbye to them, Mujukan did not forget to give his instructions. I understand, parents, it was not an accident that time, Dabao said. The last time was really dangerous. They had just finished surviving the tribulation, and Dabao and Erbao reunited, preparing to enter the space to consolidate their cultivation. The 20 shameless people beat them up in a group. No matter how protected they were by the divine clothes, they were still in the state of floating cultivation. After several attempts, they no longer had the ability to use their magical power to escape. Dabao can enter the space, but how could he abandon the 2 treasures and be beaten together? Fortunately, they were lucky, and their mother came out to look for them. Otherwise, you will really suffer. After the 2 treasures left, Yuan found Yuhairan and the others. They were attending an auction in a city. Yuan went directly into their private room. "Why are you here?" Yuhairan was surprised. He knew that Xiao Sier was not interested in the treasures of the fairy world. "I'll bring you something." "How about it?" "Did you take any good things?" Yuan put a space ring on the table and asked Yuhairan. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 695. Chapter 695 New World. Yuhairan put the ring away politely and said, "Xiao Sier, wait and see if there is anything you like. Brother Xianji still has some." Okay, Yuan nodded with interest. Only Xiao and Xiaoqi curled their lips. It turns out that the eldest brother has an immortal stone. He had called them poor before. When did the eldest brother become so stingy? The auctions below are nothing more than some elixirs and magical artifacts, which are really uninteresting. At this time, the host below held a black key and said, "Now, I will introduce this key to everyone." Key. Everyone is staring at the key. This is all about patting a baby. Patting a key is really new. Everyone is listening with sharp ears. The host continued, "This was found in a secret place." The host talked a lot of nonsense, nothing more than talking about how dangerous the process of getting the key is, in order to increase the value of the key. After the host finally finished talking nonsense, he said, "There are 4 words on this key, the door to hell. Anyone who opens this place must know where it is. You can take pictures of what you want, and those who are powerful can also go and see it. Look." The people below were not calm when they heard about the gate to hell, and everyone started talking about it. Yuan was curious, "Brother, do you know about the gate to hell?" Yuhairan nodded, "I heard that there is a black wind vent in the far west, where the wind blows all year round. I only heard that it is extremely dangerous." He has never been there either. When walking in the fairy world, he occasionally hears people talking about it. Oh! Yuan's eyes were bright. She was very free and happened to go for a walk. She looked at Mujukan, who rubbed her head and said warmly, "If Waner wants it, we can take the key later." Okay, Yuan pursed her lips. The bidding has already begun. The starting price is 1,000 immortal stones. No one in the lobby bid, but there were a lot of bids in the private room. Yuan didn't call out the price immediately. At this time, the people calling the price were all trying to raise the price. No matter how many fairy stones she has, she can't do this. Yuhairan and his brothers didn't shout, and Mujukan even more so, they just watched quietly. 100,000 fairy stones. 110,000 immortal stones. 50,000 fairy stones. At this time, there were not many bidders, and Yuan estimated that the key would cost 10 million immortal stones. Sure enough, after 1 stick of incense, the price reached 11 million. Only the people in the private room on the 7th floor were left. Yuan pressed the button at this time, and she said, 15 million. Hiss. Everyone took a breath. The person in this private room was so bold for the first time, adding 4 million in one go. 4 million, they will never be able to earn so many fairy stones in their lifetime. The people on the 7th floor did not increase the price. The host waited for a while, knowing that the price was already very high, before she knocked the hammer, 15 million for the first time. 10 million times. More than a dozen times later, the person on the 7th floor did not increase the price. It's not that the person on the 7th floor won't increase the price, it's that he won't increase the price. He was the one who sent the key. With such a high price, he would be in serious trouble. If no one takes over, he has to pay for his own property. He is not that stupid. 15 million times. The host finally knocked the hammer and made the final decision. Not long after, the maid delivered the key, and Mujukan paid the immortal stone. Yu Heiran touched his nose, he didn't have that many fairy stones. Xiao Wu and Xiao Qi looked at him and felt very comfortable. His face turned green. What the fourth sister is interested in is not a mortal thing. Yuan got her things and was ready to leave. Are you going or continuing? Xiao and Xiaoqi stood up immediately. Fourth sister, let's go with you. Yuan nodded and looked at Yu Heiran. Yu Heiran looked at Yu Haoshan, who had been serving as the backdrop. Yu Hao didn't come. Yu Haoshan nodded. Yu Heiran also nodded. He was the only one who came together, so he might as well go and have a look with Xiao Sier. Yuan immediately took them into the space, and then asked Xiaojia to find the door to hell. She was very curious about the gate to hell. She guessed that it must be a teleportation gate, and this key was the one that opened the eyes. After a while, Xiaojia was found, and Yuan came out first. This place is still 1,000 feet away from that place, and there is an arch-like opening between two connected bare mountains. There is indeed a dark wind inside, and the whining sound can be heard without the use of divine ears and consciousness. Yu Wangxingchen took a step forward and streaked into the arch like a shooting star. She looked at it with her spiritual consciousness and found that the hole was very deep. After entering the cave, she immediately became invisible in order not to cause unnecessary trouble. Of course, there are many dangers inside. As Yuan went there, she felt many powerful presences. If she wasn't invisible, she would have to fight these endlessly. The cave is very deep, going all the way underground. At first glance, it is obvious that it is a man-made cave. An hour later, Yuan arrived at her destination. This is an underground cave, which is 10 feet wide. Opposite her is a stone door. The stone door is extremely smooth, but there are traces of being attacked. There is a keyhole in the center of the stone door. Yuan looked with her divine eyes and saw that there was no fairy energy fluctuation on the stone gate, indicating that it was a real stone gate. She stepped forward, took out the black key, pointed it at the hole and inserted it. Sumi saw the key turn once, and suddenly circles of white light emerged from the hole, quickly surrounding Yuan. Yuan breathed out, it was indeed a teleportation array. When the white light burst out, it swallowed her up. The teleportation array seemed to be a long-distance teleportation array. It took a long time until Yuan's eyes became dizzy and she fainted before throwing her out. Yuan woke up because she instinctively felt the danger. Before she had time to see where she was, she ducked into the space. In the space, Yuan pressed her swollen head, swallowed a soul pill, and then looked outside. At her original place, a very large animal stood there, seeming to wonder why it suddenly lost track of the smell that was clearly there. Yuan looked at the thing. It looked like a cow. Ox. This cow is not only huge in size, but also has an aura like darkness, like the yin energy of the underworld. But this is not the underworld. There is sunshine and forest here, and the place where she fell was in the forest. What a strange place, under the sunshine, the cows with strong yin energy can move freely. The gate of hell does not mean that this place is like the underworld. Yuan didn't look at it for long before letting Xiaja see what this place was. Is it a new continent? Xiaja immediately followed suit. So Yuan looked at the scene outside the boundary gate. This is like a new continent. There are animals and people on the continent, but they are all relatively large in size. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 696. Chapter 696, The Underworld. The people are all between 2 and 3 meters tall, with black hair and yellow skin. They all look similar to the people in the Wuxia realm, but what they say is incomprehensible. Yuan is sure that this is a continent beyond the 5-axis realm. People on the mainland are cultivating, and what they absorb is not the immortal energy or spiritual energy, but the power like yin energy. Since she couldn't understand what people were saying, she didn't know what power it was. However, Yuan was very happy to discover this continent by accident. This shows that there is indeed a human continent in this universe, and this is not groundless. Yuan chose a place where humans lived. They were too big and lived mostly in caves. There were also houses built of stone, but they were far apart. While Yuan was looking outside, Mujukan was actually looking inside the space. He was also looking at this strange world. Yuan has been hiding, flying in the air and looking around. People here also grow crops, but Yuan doesn't recognize any of them. There are still people working in the fields. The farm tools they used were similar to those used in the Wuxia realm. Yuan suddenly had an idea in her mind that the people here could not be descendants from the Dongsha realm. Think about it, whether it is their clothes, the tools they use, or the houses they live in, although they are big, the format is the same as that of the 5-axis realm. It's just that what they said is different. This is probably the local dialect here. Visitors must follow the local customs and speak the local dialect. When he flew to a big mountain, he saw a man fighting with a wild beast. Yuan stopped immediately. Although the beast has a powerful aura, it does not use skills like the monster beasts in the 5-axis realm. They can simply tear, bite, pounce, and scratch. The person fighting it was a woman. The woman used a sword to find the weak point of the beast and stab it. Looking like that, it's like using a wild beast as a sparring partner. Her sword moves were powerful, and when they struck the thick skin of the beast, they did not hurt the beast at all. No wonder the beast dared to fight against the human monks so boldly. Yuan immediately moved Yuhairan and others out to let them see what they were doing. Hush, don't make any noise. As soon as they came out, Yuan sent a message to them. It was the first time for Yuhairan and the others to see such a person. They were very surprised, so they watched the battle below intently. The fight lasted for half a stick of incense, and the woman said, "I'll spare you today, get out of here." Yuan was surprised that what she said was actually from the Wuxia realm. She immediately flashed her figure, and then appeared in front of the woman. Who? The woman felt something approaching and immediately defended herself with her sword. When she saw it was Yuan, the woman rubbed her eyes and looked at Yuan in disbelief. You. It took the woman a long time to say the word you. Very surprised. The woman nodded, "Are you from Dongsha realm?" "Well, it seems that you are really a descendant of the people from the Dongsha realm," Yuan said. When she heard the woman's words from the Wuxia realm, she was very sure. In this way, she can satisfy her curiosity. The woman's eyes were full of surprise. She took a deep breath and said, "I never expected that a fairy could come to the underworld." The woman was choked up when she said this. Yuan waved her hand to bring Yuhairan and the others into the space, put up a barrier, threw out 2 futons and sat down. The woman watched the small futon grow until she could sit on it, then sat down. She was also very curious. After so many years, there was still someone from the Dongsha realm who could come to the Yin underworld. Fairy, my name is Wu Yu, did you come here in the teleportation array? Well, I came from the gate of hell, but I didn't expect this to be such a place. Yuan nodded. Yes, it's really like hell. Our ancestors have been trying to find a way to return to the Dongsha realm. However, there are no immortal stones here. We can set up a teleportation array, but there are no immortal stones. Our ancestors had to die with hatred. Wu Yu kept chatting like she was seeing a long-lost relative. Your ancestors came here, why do you want to go back? Yuan heard what she meant, and she didn't come here specifically to settle down. Wu Yu shook his head. No, my ancestor came here by accident. Only after he came did he realize that this place is like this. Oh, I thought that the teleportation array was built by your ancestors to find another continent. Yuan understood. No, the jade slips left by our ancestors said that the gate to existed long ago, and there was only one key to open the formation. After hearing what she said, Yuan remembered that the key in the hole had not been taken out. Then the mutation in your body is due to the yin qi here. Yuan didn't think about the key. As long as she had been there, the small world would be able to locate the coordinates and come back whenever she wanted. Well, and there is no immortal energy here. It is difficult to cultivate this yin energy with our kung fu. Our ancestors have been trying to find a way to return to Dongsha realm, which is a pity. Wu Yu looked very lonely. Where does this yin qi come from? You know, this yin qi only exists in the underworld. Yuan was very curious. Wu Yu, I don't know. I heard that it was not like this. Later, for some reason, the underworld lost its immortal energy and gradually turned into yin energy, and the human body also began to change. Is this so? Yuan felt a little heavy after hearing this. She thought that it was always like this. This change must have come from the damage to the energy ball. She was thinking, would it be the same if she found another human world? Whether it is suitable for human habitation or not is a matter of debate. If the human worlds we find in the future are similar to this one, then we might as well just stay in Baisha realm and stop cultivating immortality if we can't cultivate it. Thinking about the lifespan, Yuan asked again, how about the lifespan of people here now? Not long, a cultivator can live up to 500 years. Yuan understood. No wonder Wu Yu was so excited when he saw her. She came, indicating that she had immortal stones on her body, which could activate the teleportation array, and there was hope of returning to the immortal world. It is true that living for such a short period of time, for a person who can cultivate immortality, how can he be willing to do so? Mortals in the immortal world are at least 1,000 years old. The lifespan of people here is not as good as that of a mortal. Those who can cultivate can only live to be 500 years old, and those who cannot cultivate may be even lower. When Wu Yu saw that she had not spoken for a long time, she immediately stood up and held her hands in her hands and said, "Fairy, I have an uninvited invitation." Yuan raised her hand to interrupt Wu Yu. "I know you want immortal stones. Do you know that the cross-border teleportation array requires at least the best immortal stones, and they are not 1 or 2 pieces? Even if I have them, I can't give them to you for free. Even if you come back, in the fairy world, you won't be able to repay it in a short time." She is not a charity person, and she doesn't have many top-quality immortal stones. Wu Yu blushed and murmured, not knowing what to say. It was true that their request was too much. Why should they bring out the best immortal stone? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 697. Chapter 697 Yinming Stone. Suddenly, she had a clever idea. This fairy came from the teleportation array, so she wouldn't go back. If she wants to go back, she has to take their teleportation array, so it shouldn't be too much for her to get the best immortal stone. Yuan saw her expression change again and again, and knew what Wu Yu was thinking. Haha, I'm afraid I'll disappoint her again. As expected, Wu Yu said again, Fairy, don't you go back to Dongsha realm. Hui, why don't you go back? But I don't need your teleportation array. She has a boundary gate, and she is telling the truth, and she is not deceiving anyone. Wu Yu doesn't believe it. If he doesn't sit in the teleportation array, why should he sit there? Is it possible to fly back? Is it possible? At that time, her ancestor was already an immortal and could not fly back. This fairy must be joking. After thinking this way, she calmed down and didn't panic. This fairy has been here for a long time, and the fairy power in her body will be exhausted, and she will always come to her. By then, Yuan guessed what she meant, waved her hand to remove the barrier, collected the futon, and left in a flash. Now that she understands this continent, there is no need for her to waste her time with a little girl. Hey, wait. Wu Yu was dumbfounded. This fairy had a bad temper. She flew into the sky in a hurry and chased after her. She didn't know why she wanted to catch up. She was clearly thinking that one day, the fairy would come back to beg them. But his feet were not controlled by his heart, and he rushed to catch up. It's a pity that her cultivation speed cannot be compared with Yuan's, and Yuan disappeared in the blink of an eye. Wu Yu fell to the ground in annoyance and looked at the sky. It took a long time before he came back. Actually, Yuan was watching her from a distance. Seeing her remorseful look, Yuan was in a very good mood. Little girl, you dare to threaten her if you have a big fart. After watching Wu Yu leave, Yuan entered the space and asked Xiaojie to see where the yin qi burst out from. If it was still flowing, there must be yin veins. Xiaojie took the order to find it. Xiaojie found all the yin veins in the yin and underworld. As expected, they were all high-grade yin veins, exuding a cold aura. Yuan was thinking, should she take away all these yin veins and help them transfer some immortal veins? But meddling in this business will definitely affect other immortal worlds. If you can do this, you might as well draw a few immortal veins and divine veins from other immortal realms to the Baisha realm, and the Baisha realm will be preserved. Why move? But other realms will be exhausted early because of this. Save one world and destroy another. Doing this kind of thing is not worth the gain, and it is also immoral. Yuan thought about it and decided to forget it. If he encounters some useless small world or secret realm in the future, he can drain the immortal veins. Yuan was watching carefully at the boundary gate, and suddenly a lake that was boiling like boiling water caught her attention. The lake is 100 feet wide, and the center of the lake is rolling like boiling water. Of course, Yuan didn't think it was boiling water, but a boiling phenomenon caused by a large amount of yin qi coming out from underneath. Yuan appeared on it as soon as her consciousness moved. Sure enough, the yin energy here is so strong that it almost turns into mist. Boom! Suddenly, a giant python as big as Dehe suddenly jumped out of the lake. The giant python opened its mouth and bit Yuan. At the critical moment, Yuan avoided the attack of the giant python with a flick of her feet. Yuan immediately became invisible. The python took a bite and visibly stayed on the lake. Yuan looked at the giant python coldly. There was no fairy energy here, so there was no fairy power fluctuation. She only paid attention to the surface of the lake that was boiling like boiling water, ignoring whether there was any danger in the lake. She was careless. Although she wouldn't die if a giant python swallowed her, she would definitely be injured. Being immersed in the body with such strong yin qi, her muscles and bones could be injured at least, or her dantian could be seriously injured. That would be troublesome. She waved her hand and the little snake came out. Eh? It's so cold. Master, is this the underworld? The little snake shivered violently as soon as it came out. No, this is a new continent, go and deal with that guy. Yuan pointed at the giant python that shrank back into the lake. The python may have sensed danger and immediately retreated into the lake. The little snake nodded, and the figure disappeared into the lake in a flash. After a while, the lake rolled even more violently, and it didn't take long for the lake to return to its previous state. The little snake turned into its own body and flew out of the lake, with the giant python still wrapped around its tail. The giant python had its head drooped and was already dead. The little snake threw its body on the shore and took out several egg-sized, dusty stones from the space inside its body and gave them to her. "Master, look at this." Yuan took it and looked at the stone carefully. The yin energy on it was so strong, it was like a yin stone used in the underworld. There must be a top-grade yin vein below this, and this is the top-grade yin ming stone. It's a pity that Taoist cultivators can't use this unless they have a chaotic body. The chaotic body is even more powerful than her star body. It is a physique that can absorb any power for its own use. "Is there anything like this down there?" Yuan pointed at the giant python. The little snake rolled his eyes. "Master, am I the one who is so heartless? You must have dealt with me as well." "No way, Master, please accept me into the space. This evil spirit is too heavy and I can't bear it." Yuan glared at him. He was so stupid. He dared to indirectly scold her for being short-minded. She would deal with him when she had time. With a flash of consciousness, she took in the little snake and the giant python corpse. The body was thrown into the black earth, and not long after, the body of the giant python was devoured. "Awesome." Yuan secretly praised her in her heart, saying that her space can swallow up anything, and she will not refuse anyone who comes. Thinking that space had this function, Yuan had an idea. She immediately jumped into the lake and escaped towards the bottom of the lake. The bottom of the lake is very deep, more than 1,000 feet long. When she escaped to the bottom of the lake was full of stones, and Yuan moved them into the space. "Throw all the Yinming stones into the black earth." Sure enough, the black earth swallowed up those Yinming stones in a short time and turned them into fairy energy. The fairy energy in the space became a little richer. Yuan collected some Yinming stones into the red earth, and the effect was the same, except that the red earth was transformed into divine power. Perhaps the divine power requires more energy, and the increase in red earth's divine power is less. But as long as there is an increase, Yuan also likes it. The space is expanding. While feeling happy, Yuan saw in her consciousness that the mountains around the space were expanding, revealing more virgin forests. Yuan was surprised. How could this happen? Is there something in these Yinming stones that she doesn't know about? So Yuan looked around and checked among the Yinming stones that had not been received. Sure enough, there was a small amount of blue stone mixed in it. Yuan grabbed it with her hand and the blue stone was sucked over. "Is this a space stone?" Yuan saw the laws of space on the blue stone at a glance. She was overjoyed. This thing is a good thing. No wonder the space will expand when it swallows the Yinming stone. It swallows the space stone inside. Hee. It's true that you can't find anything even if you wear iron shoes, and it takes no effort to get it. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 698. Chapter 698 Space Stone. Such a precious thing, there are so many at the bottom of the lake. With a flash of consciousness, she moved Mujukan and the others out. "You pick out all these stones, they are of great use," Yuan said to them while holding the space stone. Mujukan recognized it as a space stone and immediately went to pick it out. He remembered that the 4 giant pillars that appeared in Baisugad were made of space stones. It's a pity that he didn't get any of it, and his father-in-law took it all away. "There are so many here, collect more and give some to master when you go back. He will be so happy that he will die." Yuhairan and the others did not know that this was the space stone, but they listened to Yuan and told them to choose. The group of people immediately started sorting, but as time went by, the water pressure below became too strong for everyone. Yuan simply collected all the lake water into the space and sprinkled it on the thousands of acres of medicinal fields. Without water, the situation below can be seen clearly. Waner, look at this. Mujukan led Yuan over and looked at a boulder that was more than 10 feet tall. Oh my god. This big piece is all there. This piece was placed in the space. I didn't know how much the space would expand. Yuan swallowed, and finally placed it on a high mountain. Only black earth and red earth can swallow up space, so Yuan placed the large space stone on the mountain, together with the ore that the star-broken sword was stuck on. Shi Yuan has other plans for that space. In the future, she will find the materials for her father to refine the space artifact, just like her space. From now on, everyone will have one, and when in danger, they will have a place to hide. Situations like the last time when 2 treasures were robbed by people from the Shangqing sect will never happen again. Just hide in your own space. It took a few people a month to clear the bottom of the lake. Yuan swallowed all the Yinming stones and small, poor quality space stones into the black earth and red earth. At this point, the total space has expanded to at least 100,000 acres this time. Yuan sighed, this time the space is full. The immortal energy and divine power in the space have increased by half. After Yuan collected the Yinming stone here, he put Mujukan and others into the space, and immediately left here and entered the space. In the space, after Yuan practiced some practice, she walked out of the practice room in a happy mood and walked to the medicine field. In the newly added land, Little Snake, Mujukan, and 10,000 Buddhas are working hard to apply rain to make the sown seeds sprout quickly. The 4 Yuhairan brothers are still in retreat. Yuan smiled so hard that she couldn't see her teeth when she saw such a big space. This trip to the underworld is not a waste. The space has not added land for a long time. This time, the black land and red land have actually increased by 10,000 acres each. On the black land, Mujukan and the others were busy, but on the red land, she was the only one to do the hard work. 10,000 acres, Yuan thought about it, feeling both happy and annoyed. Then she dodged into the red earth. Yuan and the others were busy in the space, but Wu Yu was in despair. She was looking for Yuan outside every day, hoping to find her, and asked her to help her no matter what, even at the expense of the treasure left by her ancestors. There is no use keeping the treasure, as it cannot be exchanged for a return to the fairy world. Haven't seen anyone for a month. Haven't seen anyone for 2 months. Haven't seen anyone for half a year. I haven't seen anyone for 10 years. Wu Yu has given up. In the past 10 years, people in the underworld have obviously felt that their yin qi has weakened, and some people have discovered that the water in the giant python lake has disappeared, and that the powerful giant python has also disappeared. Wu Yu also went to see it in person. When everyone was wondering why there was nothing here and why it was gone, what Wu Yu thought of was Yuan. Only she had that strength. In other words, she has not left at all, she is still in the underworld. Wu Yu couldn't help but feel happy. After that, she started looking for Yuan again. Yuan practiced cultivation in the space for a while and planted seeds in the red soil. By the time the medicinal seedlings in the red soil had sprouted, 20 years had passed outside. Yuan K came out of the space. Hey, the yin qi has weakened so much. Before Yuan took a good look, she clearly felt that the yin qi had weakened by at least 1/5. She immediately flew to the lake and looked into the deep pit. Sure enough, there was no yin qi coming out from below. There was a lot of water in the pit, and it was no longer boiling. One of her unintentional actions actually made the yin qi in the underworld fade so much. As soon as they finished collecting it, they left here and entered the space, where they stayed for 20 years outside time. It's a pity that there is no immortal vein in the yin and underworld. If there is one, If all the yin veins are removed like this, maybe it can be cultivated back. But the premise is that the immortal veins cannot be mined with immortal stones. Fairy. Just when her thoughts were wandering off, Wu Yu ran towards her. Wu Yu. Yes, the fairy still remembers the little girl Wu Yu ran over panting, and she finally found the fairy. Are you looking for me? Yes. You haven't given up yet? Are you so sure that I haven't left? Yuan looked at Wu Yu with interest. 20 years have passed and this girl hasn't given up yet. Well, the fairy must not have left. Wu Yu pointed to the lake. Yuan frowned and asked seriously, have you ever thought about how you would survive if you really went back to the fairy world? These people have returned to the immortal world, just like ordinary people. How can they earn immortal stones for cultivation? Their lifespan is limited. When they reach higher levels of cultivation, the daylilies will become cold. Wu Yu was silent. Why haven't they thought about this problem? So they still keep the treasures left by their ancestors. They just want to return to the fairy world one day and exchange the treasures for immortal stones for cultivation. But the fairy in front of her was not in a hurry or worried. It was obvious that she was not in a hurry. But they couldn't wait any longer. They didn't say anything when they asked the fairy to take the fairy stone. Why should they give it to them for free? Moreover, it seemed that this fairy was also a master who didn't let go of the eagle when he saw the rabbit. After a long while, Wu Yu said, Fairy, we have decided to return to the fairy world. This is also the last wish of our ancestors. Our ancestors left something. Fairy, take a look and if possible, we can exchange it for you with a fairy stone. What is it? Her treasures are all precious items, and ordinary things cannot enter her eyes at all. If that thing is worth the fairy stone given to them, she can exchange it as long as she does not lose money or loses less money. Wu Yu thought for a while and said, it is a top-quality fairy weapon, a mask called kinyan. As long as a monk wears kinyan, he can not only change his appearance, but also his breath. Fairy, do you think this? Let me think about it. I heard that this Jianyan was really good, but it was far inferior to her divine clothes. She had gone to the god realm and the immortal weapon would be of no use. If it were a divine weapon, it would still be useful. However, this thing is indeed a treasure in the fairy world. It is most suitable to wear kinyan and walk in the fairy world. Yuan thought for a moment and decided to trade with them. The best immortal weapon was worth 10,000 high-quality immortal stones in the fairy world. She used space to take them away without using the flower fairy stone at all. This thousand-faced person was considered fair. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 699. Chapter 699 Sending Buddha to the West. If you get the materials in the future, just let your father refine it again. Thinking of this, she said, now that you have decided, then get ready. I will come to your place to find you in 3 days. Okay, thank you Fairy Wu Yu did not understand what Yuan meant and left happily. Yuan returned to Dongshu Immortal Realm in the past 3 days to find a place for them and set up a formation. Send Buddha to the west. Such a group of strange people will definitely attract attention as long as they appear in the fairy world. It is very difficult for them to live quietly and safely. After finding a place to live, Yuan Ke returned to the underworld. 3 days later, Yuan arrived as promised, and Wu Yu and her tribe had been waiting for a long time. Fairy when Wu Yu saw her, she was so happy that her voice changed. Are you ready? Yuan asked lightly, glancing at the people present. There were thousands of people, all looking at her with gleaming eyes. There are also many local aborigines looking on with envy. Some were even whispering to each other, but Yuan could hear them but couldn't understand them. "Get ready, fairy, let's go," Wu Yu said and took the others to leave. Yuan also followed. It was impossible for her to receive people into the space in full view of everyone. When he arrived at a very secluded place, Yuan said without saying a word. He took all the people into the space with a wave of his hand and trapped them with restrictions before entering the space. Yuan returned to the fairy world and moved them out. This is a border place in the northern immortal territory. The immortal energy is relatively thin, but it is safe enough. And there is a small town thousands of miles away. The people in the small town are not high in cultivation, and there are even mortals, so it is very suitable for them to live here. When Wu Yu and the others were taken into the space by Yuan, they were shocked. They were all frightened and wondering what the fairy meant. Should we kill them or imprison them? Force them to hand over Qian Yan? Wu Yu's parents even scolded Wu Yu. Wu Yu was also stunned on the spot and didn't know what was going on. The tribesmen scolded her and even her grandparents beat her. She said that she believed other people's words casually, and now she harmed the whole clan. At this moment, they suddenly changed places again. As soon as they came out, everyone was shocked when they felt the immortal energy. What exactly is going on? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Did they guess wrong? Didn't the fairy want to imprison them? Is this the fairyland? Wu Yu was the first to react. Fairy Wu Yu shouted in surprise when she saw Yuan looking at them calmly. Well, people are not stupid yet. Yuan glanced at the other people and said, how could everything that happened in the space be hidden from her? Thank you, Fairy Wu Yu's grandparents came over immediately to thank her. There's no need to thank him, just give me the things, Yuan said coldly. Those tribesmen just scolded Wu Yu. Not only did they not defend him, they even beat him. Yuan naturally didn't look good on them. Okay, the two of them were a little embarrassed, and immediately took out a box from the storage space and held it in front of Yuan with both hands. Yuan only waved it gently, and the box was in her hand. She opened it and saw a thin and transparent film lying inside. Yuan picked it up after cleansing it and put it on her face. When the film is attached to the face, it quickly sticks to the face without any gaps and fits perfectly. And the face turned into another face. Yuan took a closer look with her consciousness and found that not only her face had changed, but her breath had also changed. What makes her happiest is that she herself cannot see the original appearance. Very good, Yuan praised her. When she said this, her voice was not her original one, which she liked even more. This Qinyan is indeed worth bringing them back. Wu Yu and the others knew Qinyan's function, and they were only worried whether Yu Wangzai would like it or not, and whether she would have any other requirements for them. After all, no matter where they are all weak existences in front of Yuan. It is easier to kill them than to crush an ant. When they heard she said it was very good, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yuan Ke said, you guys should live here. This is the border area of the northern immortal territory. The immortal energy is not very strong, but it is better to be safe. There is a small town 1,000 miles away. Only go out after you have a certain strength. Here I have set up a formation for you, so as long as you don't go out and cause trouble, there will be no problem with your safety. Thank you, Fairy. This time, the whole clan saluted her and thanked her. No need, we are just making a transaction, Yuan said, taking out a space ring and throwing it to Wu Yu. Inside are some fairy stones, elixirs, and tricks for entering and exiting the formation. Let's clear both. Goodbye. After saying that, Yuan entered the space and then came to the Yinming continent again. She had discovered before that there was actually a trace of fairy energy in the air. Although it was small, it was there, which meant that the fairy veins in the Yinming continent had not been completely eroded. So she found another high-level yin vein and drained all the yin veins. After that, nearly 10 yin meridians were drawn out one after another. 10 years later, there are still 2/5 of the yin qi in the Yinming continent. Yuan saw that the people in Yinming continent were overjoyed because their yin qi had weakened. And she could easily feel the fairy spirit in the air. 100 years later, there is no yin qi in the Yinming continent, and people on the continent can feel the fairy qi. People are excited. People bowed their heads to the sky and worshipped the way of heaven. Yuan twitched her lips. They thanked the wrong person. At this time, Tiandao suddenly woke up. Looking at the continent without yin qi, he suddenly understood. When he saw Yuan, who stood out from the crowd and had a constipated look on his face, among the crowd of people who were all worshipping him, he smiled. With a thought in his mind, little white light points flew into Yuan's body like meteors. When Yuan saw it, she felt happy and her face relaxed. It's a pity that there is not much light of merit and virtue, the way of heaven has just awakened, and the strength has not been restored. When yin qi swept through the entire Yinming continent, which was not called Yinming continent at that time, Heavenly Dao sealed a top-quality immortal vein and several high-level immortal veins, and then he fell into a deep sleep because of this. When the yin qi on the Yinming continent decreases, the seal will loosen. When it is completely gone now, that is when the seal is completely released. However, this will require him to recover before he has the strength to unblock it. Tiandao was very grateful to Yuan, but after thanking him, he fell asleep again. Yuan didn't benefit much, but it was better than nothing. The biggest gain is the space. The fairy energy in the space has all turned into mist. Speaking of which, she has benefited a lot. In the space, Yu Heiran and the others were practicing very vigorously. Their cultivation was soaring, which made them happy. Mujukan couldn't be more depressed, just watching them practice, but he couldn't, and had to suppress his cultivation to make no progress. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 700. Chapter 700,000 Faces. Yuan saw it in her eyes. She looked at the Yinming continent, hoping that the Yinming continent would recover soon so that Mujukan could come here to survive the Ascension tribulation. After returning, Yuan found the two Baofeng clans and threw them into the space to practice. Such a rare holy land for cultivation. If you don't practice here, where else would you like to practice? Of course, she herself has been practicing in seclusion and has been practicing for 100 years. Now she can definitely advance. Time flies so fast, 3,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the space, the immortal energy exploded, and everyone was about to break through to the great realm. Yuan immediately stepped out of the space, moved them out, and let them break through on their own. She also threw Arthur and the little snake to protect them. She took the opportunity to return to the Baisha divine realm. She had given the space stone and Kinyan to her father before retreating into seclusion. Now she went to see if they had been refined. As for her cultivation level, she is still a little short of breaking through to the immortal emperor, so she will have to work on it slowly. It is not that easy to break through a big realm, especially the immortal emperor. If there were 4 immortal realms, the total number of people with the strength of the immortal emperor realm would only be in the hundreds. There are even fewer people who have ascended to the divine realm. In the shrine, Tian Yan and Thief God were playing chess, while Yao Ji was watching. Seeing Yuan coming, the two of them stopped playing chess. "Mom and Dad, the old man is here too," Yuan greeted. "Why did it take so long to come back this time?" Yao Ji stepped forward and held her hand. "I'm in retreat, Mother, how are you doing?" Yuan said. "We are not the same as before. Your father has made all the things. He will bring them to you later," Yao Ji said warmly. "Oh, are you done practicing?" Yuan was overjoyed. Her father was awesome. Thanks to the god of thieves this time, he provided a lot of weapon refining materials. Even your father is not as rich as him. Yao Ji pursed her lips and chuckled. The god of thieves lives up to his reputation as the god of thieves. He used to do a lot of stealing in the Tianxia God realm. Even Tianyan was envious of what he took out. Then the old man who is so generous this time is so generous, why don't you ask Dad to help him refine weapons? Haha, yeah, but this time he was really bleeding profusely. Yuan raised the corners of her mouth, just as long as it bleeds profusely. Apart from teaching Mujuk some formations, the old man who knocked on the door was really an iron rooster who couldn't get in and out. She never got anything bigger than his fingernail. As the mother and daughter were talking, Tianyan brought a cloth bag to her. Everything is in there, wire, let's take a look. Yuan nodded. She took Kinyan out first and put it on in front of the three of them. After putting it on, she asked, Mom and Dad, can you tell it's your daughter? If you look carefully, there is still a little bit, but it can be ignored. People who are not very familiar with Wei-er will never think that it is Wei-er. Tianyan said that he has the strongest consciousness here. He said that it can be ignored. Then she will be in the future. Walking around the world, no one would recognize her. Yuan liked it so much that she recognized the owner immediately and didn't take it off. She just wore it like this. Whenever her consciousness moved, she could change her face if she wanted to. It can also turn into a man's face, but it can change into 10,000 faces, so let's call it 10,000 faces, Tianyan said. Ah! You can also turn into a man. After Yuan was surprised, she immediately turned into a suave young man. Made Tianyan and the other three people laugh. Girl, do you still have the space stone? After laughing, the thief god rubbed his hands and asked her. Why do you want so much? Eat it, Mujukan gave you so much, you won't use it all, right? Yuan asked the thieving god strangely. Mujukan gave him a lot of money, at least 1,000 pieces, and each piece was the size of an egg. He can just refine 10 space rings. Yuan's mind suddenly flashed. He wouldn't want to make formation pillars like Ming Ao, would he? You don't want to refine the formation pillars, do you? Hee, you know me, girl, yes, I want to give it a try. The word I almost came out of my mouth. I am such a serious person here. The thief god immediately changed his words and did not dare to say it. If you tell me, Tianyan can make him unable to take care of himself. You'd better stop doing it. I don't have so many space stones. I gave them all to my father. Yuan glanced at her father and saw that he was looking at the god of thieves, as if he was watching a show. The two of them may have made a bet a long time ago, and the father bet that she would not pay. Yuan will definitely not give it to her. The space stones she used to refine the life space for her father are still small pieces, and the big one is still in the space. Such a big treasure, she wouldn't give it to anyone, keeping it for future use. The god of thieves is crying and sad, so pitiful. Yuan Ke ignored his pitiful look, said something to Tianyan and his wife, stepped into the space and left. Liang Bao and the others were still going through the tribulation. As soon as Yuan left, Tianyan said with a smile, how's it going? I said that you can't get one piece, but you little old man still doesn't believe it. Don't waste your treasure, go back and practice hard. After Tianyan finished speaking, he threw the thief out of the palace with a wave of his hand. The god of thieves curled his lips and hummed, father and daughter have the same virtues. They just throw away trash. Hey, it's better to be a disciple. The god of thieves sighed. He had given up so many treasures but still couldn't get the space stone. He was at a loss. He snorted again, he must regain his position next time, how can he lose money in vain? Stinky girl, let's wait and see. The body entered his space in a flash. He has already refined an array pillar in his space, and he wants to build a teleportation array in his own territory. If he steals something, he can teleport it back immediately and no one can catch him. It's a pity that stinky girl didn't give it. Yuan returned to the place where Liang Bao and the others were going through the tribulation. They were going through the tribulation and couldn't do anything, so she opened the small cloth bag Tian Yan gave her. The levels of these life spaces are lower than hers, and her space can accommodate them. She took a random space ring and looked at it. It was filled with divine power, but it was not strong. The space is 100 acres in size, and there is land that can be planted, but it cannot grow, but this is already good. After all, the materials themselves are insufficient to refine this life space. After finding the materials, they can be re-refined to improve the quality. Yuan finished reading and watched them attentively. Half a year later, everyone successfully passed the tribulation. Yuan took them away and gave each of them a space ring. Even Rong Xiu got one. After that, Yuan came to the underworld again. She thought, if the underworld is the fairy world, then there must be a divine world. She wanted Xiaojie to look for it. If it is yin energy like the underworld, she can still help. The most important thing is that she has benefited a lot. This is considered as experience, but it is different from other people's experience. After hearing what she said, Xiaojie thought it made sense and immediately started searching. Small world, there is roughly a direction in the spiritual consciousness regarding the distribution of each world. Because each realm is composed of the small world, the big world, the fairy world, and the divine world, their distribution is regular. End of this chapter.